Hello, my adoring public. It's been a while. Haven't felt moved to do anything in terms of the YouTube channel for close to a couple of years at this point, but that's not unprecedented. I picked a great time to go back to it because my adoring audience of probably 2 is now down to probably 1, including my therapist. But you never know, the algorithm might decide to shower its blessings upon me for some incomprehensible reason. So anyway, so like I said, I didn't have any random topics of discussion that I had to discuss and knew how. But I finally came up with a non-random topic that I felt like I could say something about, at least the beginnings of saying something, and perhaps start a new series with a subject that isn't just my random rambling vlogs about philosophical concepts that nobody other than me cares about. This is talking about the media, because people really love to discuss entertainment and pretend that it's something other than light fluff to pass the time. And people have been pretending that for close to 100 years at this point, and that's what I want to talk about. So this is really delving into the archives of my long and storied past. Not sure how much of this I've revealed before, but I'm just going to go ahead and dive into it. So I was born in late 1980 and grew up throughout the 80s and 90s. I didn't become the version of myself that directly preceded the current version of myself until I was 14. So before that was an even more remote ancestor of mine up until the age of 14. But unlike most of the things that I'm into, this story goes back to, all the way back to the earliest handful of memories that I have from literal childhood before I was even a teenager. So to very quickly preamble my backstory, my parents divorced when I was 1, and unusually for the time, custody went to my father because my mother was more interested in staying in university and pursuing her career ambitions. That worked out real great for her, but that's another story. So my father had his father, who they were not on great terms, but his father was willing to go to bat for the family in a conservative kind of way. That was part of what they didn't get along with about, but it worked to my father's advantage because his father was willing to pay court costs so that he could take my mother to family court in order to obtain custody if she tried to contest it, but she wasn't too terribly interested in contesting it anyway. So for both of those reasons, my father ended up as one of the relatively few single fathers in a world largely dominated by single mothers, with intact families increasingly becoming the second place category there. Anyway, again, that's another story. I'll get into gender topics again someday, but that's controversy, and we can't have that. No, we're going to talk about things that are lighthearted and fluffy and help people feel good, or at least help people feel good during World War fucking II, because that's what we're on about. But to finish the preamble, so from 1 until 14, I lived with my father. I'm told that there was several stepmothers involved when I was a literal baby and toddler age, but I don't remember any of them. My memory kind of starts to pick up somewhere in the 6 to 8 range, with very few exceptions. But somewhere in that range, my father did one of the very, very few good things he ever did as a parent, which was to share with me his love of an entertainment form called old-time radio. Now, most people today can barely conceive of television, and that's only because the internet is continuing to prop it up and keep it around so that a bunch of Hollywood execs can keep their jobs. But before before the movie industry was as dominant of a juggernaut as it until recently was, and is still kind of continuing under that momentum. Before that, when it was like the 20s through the 50s and 60s, and probably into the 70s, actually, Star Wars was when the things really started to shift. But before Star Wars, movies were a thing that people liked, but they were not the dominant cultural monolith that they would become. And television just was getting its start in the 50s and became fairly well established by the 60s and 70s. But before that, the entertainment form that absolutely dominated America's pop culture more than anything was radio programs. Radio dramas, radio comedies, horror stories, science fiction stories, westerns, detective thrillers. This was huge. This was the TV and movies of its day before those industries expanded to the point that we currently take for granted. And then, of course, before the internet came in and wrecking balled through the entire thing. But anyway, so my father, among his many flaws, did do one very good thing for my sake, and that was to introduce me to the concept of old-time radio programs. So basically, my earliest happy memories all revolve around those. It is a passion which kind of went into a lapse for most of the next 25 years while I was embarking on the second phase of my life. After one apocalypse and before another one. But so during that interim period, I occasionally poked at the old-time radio's obsession, but I didn't pay it a huge amount of attention. And again, it was a family member that changed that and brought it back into the fold. This time, after the death of my mother, I began to have a much closer relationship with her sister, my only maternal aunt. And since my paternal aunt is somebody who lives in a very faraway place who I've practically not seen probably since I was 10, whereas I did occasionally get to see my maternal aunt, whose name is Meredith, so I'll just call her Meredith from now on. So Meredith and I began to talk on the phone regularly. We had both lost my mother, and we had both lost our homes for unrelated reasons. The apocalypses happened in our respective lives at around the same time. So both of us lost almost all of our possessions and almost all of the hobbies that had kept us sane through our introverted, professionally unsuccessful, romantically non-existent lives. And so we kind of developed a new bond. We talk on the phone every week for an amount of time that is frankly embarrassing, so I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's a lot. And so every week we check in, and we have found technically 3, and the third one's reading, which is probably like the most influential on our personality, but we spend the least time doing it because it takes the most effort to indulge in. She is currently legally blind, and so after a lifetime of being a voracious reader, now all she can do is the occasional book on tape. But I occasionally read to her over the phone, and so that's the number 3 thing that we do. And the number 1 thing that we do is involves a video game, and that's another long story, so I'll get into that later. But the number 2 thing that we do together is she convinced me to get back into old-time radio to an extent that I had not done during that 25-year interim, and I've been very happy with that decision that we collectively made. So she was originally listening to a revival program. I'm not sure if it would be appropriate for me to advertise which one it is. There are several, but basically there's a very small niche hobbyist interest in keeping these old radio programs alive, and so there's this program that picks a few more or less at random and broadcasts them, and Meredith started out wanting to just do that because it was part of her daily routine, and so I indulged her, and I picked up a fondness for it as well. But also, I have been broadening my horizons and sharing some of my hand-picked favorites with her. And anyway, so this the association with Meredith has reawakened my fondness for the old-time radio, sometimes abbreviated OTR. So if I ever say OTR, that's what that means. The old-time radio habit has been rekindled within me as a result of Meredith's influence, and so we've done that on a weekly basis, and a lot of the old programs might be interesting to talk about, but the really interesting one that I want to get into is a highly unusual story among that niche hobby already. So the old-time radio period is generally considered to be broadly defined as the 20s through 60s, but really the thrust of it, the core, was the 1930s through 50s. So there was pre-World War II, during World War II, and post-World War II into the beginning of the television era, which was also like the kind of a ramp-up of what would become the blockbuster film era, which didn't get going until a while after that. But they were, movies had been around since the 20s, but the movie industry picked up a lot of steam during the radio period, largely because of a heavy cross-pollination between the actors that would be in the radio programs and the actors that would go to the, at that time, very aptly named silver screen, because it was usually black and white. Took a while for them to get the color technology mastered. Anyway, so 20s through 60s is almost always considered the radio period. Then, in 1984, I believe, something very interesting happened, and I did not know at the time, but this was a brand new thing that my father must have gotten into on the ground floor, and it was probably very exciting to him. We did not talk about it then because I was a dumb kid and I too busy playing with Legos to care about what was going through my father's mind, but besides which it often wasn't all that pleasant, but again, I keep getting distracted. So 1984, there had been enthusiasts of radio around, but this was pre-internet. There was no organization among them. There was no way for them to really, get things rolling, get the ball together. So it was a very, very niche thing. But somehow, through some or another of his enthusiast pursuits that he was doing, like probably ordering out of the back of magazines or something, but he had very, very little money to work with, and he was raising this kid, so he had even less money to work with. So I don't know how he did it, but somehow he got involved with, involved in the sense of being a fan, a consumer of the media. He didn't help create it or anything, but he became aware very quickly after it happened of the existence of a program called Bury1ng. Now, Ray Bradbury is one of the most famous science fiction writers of the 20th century, and science fiction was invented in the 20th century, so he was one of the most famous science fiction writers, just period. And he wrote a lot of things that were not science fiction, so calling him that is perhaps a little reductive, but that's a long argument that fan communities have debated for a long time, so we won't get into that. So for effectively, call him science fiction because that was most of what he was best known for. Bury1ng was a production of the Brigham Young University Media Services Department, Media Studies, whatever the term. They got a grant from National Public Radio Again, I feel like I'm advertising things, and maybe I shouldn't be. But this is a historical story from close to half a century ago. Most of the people involved are not around anymore. Probably, I am not affecting them financially. Let's hope. Anyway, these different groups, the funding from NPR to help Brigham Young do this as a project for its students that were probably planning to work in television, but they got, for whatever reason, they decided to work on radio as a way of ramping up to it. I don't know. I have not done research to study this. This is just going off of what I know from my personal life. The old time radio, Bradbury 13 was a old time style radio program produced a good 20 to 25 years after the old time radio period had ended. Therefore, as someone who was listening to these old time radio programs and had to put up with the idea that they frequently had rather bad sound recording quality, Bradbury 13 was next level awesome. It was incredibly professionally done sound editing of what was brand new technology and techniques and so forth of the 1980s. So in an age when basically nobody else was doing this, they did a really, really good job. They got some extremely talented voice actors who no one has ever heard of in any other context to record this program and then not otherwise have a career in recording, as far as I'm aware of. The one big name besides Bradbury himself attached to this program was Paul Frees, who was one of the most famous voice actors of the radio period and got brought in to be the narrator of Bradbury 13, and he knocked it out of the park. Everyone in the program did a good job, but he did probably the best job. His voice giving the opening quote, a quote reading directly from the Bradbury text before the rest of the program would be a dramatization that frequently changed a lot about the program, and that's kind of what I'm preambling my way towards. Is this is an introduction. So I was going to make this a vlog just about my life in general. This particular slice of life, my enthusiasm for old-time radio, and I was just going to talk about the subject generally, but it seems like it works better as an introduction to a series that I was considering doing where I would talk about the Bradbury 13 episodes. Now, I'm probably not going to do 13 episodes of the series because most of them don't require that much discussion, and also probably the most relevant rubric to talk about the difference is to compare the original Bradbury text with the dramatization. If you want to hear the dramatizations, you can find them all over YouTube, although at least some of them are getting copyright struck by somebody who claims to be Ray Bradbury, who is dead, so it's either actually his estate or it's some sort of scammer using his name. Who knows? But hopefully, for the moment at least, you can still find them, and if not, then hopefully I will be able to talk about them, if not from fresh listens, at least from fairly recent memories, and we will be able to discuss the episodes and the interesting subject of how the adaptations of the episodes differed from the original text. In some cases, there's not a huge amount of difference, and in others, the story is completely different. Probably the first episode that I would want to do would be the one where they changed a massive aspect of the story in a way that completely transforms it, whereas the episode that I would call the best also sticks the closest to the source material, so I don't really have an awful lot to say other than it's good, go listen to it. So that episode will probably come late, or it might be wrapped up into a conclusion where I don't talk about any specific story, but just say, these are the others and I have nothing to say. But there are at least 4, and if I get fairly personal, probably at least 3 more. So let's plan on this introduction and a conclusion wrap up, and then 4 to 7 more episodes depending on whether I really decide to bare my soul or if I want to be somewhat professional and just stick to discussing media in a more meaningful sense that other people would care about. So anyway, so this is eventually awkwardly rambled its way to being an introduction. 20 minutes of getting there, and I could have said it in 5 if I had a script, but whatever. So yeah, look forward to 5 to 8 more episodes from me whenever I get around to doing them, of talking about the Bury1ng program, and then if I get like 3 people who say something about that, positive and encouraging me to go on, then maybe I will move on and talk about other radio programs. Part of what prompted me to do this vlog today was I made a comment on a social media platform that I don't want to dox myself on, so I'm going to resist the impulse to read the comment, even though I'm rather proud of it. But basically, I was talking about one of the interesting stories kind of behind the scenes of my old-time radio passion. And there are a lot of interesting stories, and I'm only repeating them second or third hand, but I can put a little bit of a personal spin on it because of my own experience. So, if 5 people ever see this and find it interesting, then I will be doing spectacularly well by my standards. I have no interest in becoming a professional YouTuber. This will never be monetized unless I'm forced to monetize it in order to keep it from being deleted, which YouTube will probably do at some point. Yeah, I got things to say, and I'm going to be saying them soon-ish. Let's call it good there for now. This is like my longest video and one of my least substantial, but hopefully it gets the ball rolling on a new chapter where uploads can get a little more frequent and maybe a little bit of an audience can happen eventually. So hope to see you there. It's nice to have something to potentially look forward to, even if it's all theoretical. Oh, and I'm now being obsessed with the reflection of my desktop in my glasses, so it's probably time to wrap it up. We just passed 22:22. It would have been great if I could have stopped right there. Oh well. Hope to see you soon.